Hello agus fáilte arás chuig ar Gaeilge YouTube. Hello and welcome back to yet another video from the Beardy teacher. I'm recording this today in the lovely county of Longford, which is located in the Bog of Allen, right at the heart of Ireland. Today's video is as part 2 of a 3-part video series on covering on Amsir Láithreach, or the present tense in Irish. The first video covered the Gaeilge Réimniú. This video will cover the Dara Réimniú, or the second conjugation, second grouping, and the third video will cover the 11 irregular verbs in Irish. I know nobody likes to hear about irregular verbs, but they are things that do exist in every language and you just have to learn them. It could be a lot worse. In English, I believe there are over 200 irregular verbs, and believe it or not, we've all learned those at some point. If you understand what I'm saying, we've all learned those. So 11 by comparison isn't that bad. Anyway, Lana Muidirag leis an bhísean. Let's continue with the video. The Amsir Láithreach. Just a quick recap. It is the present tense and it relates to things that are happening now and things that happen every day. The previous video, which I will put a link somewhere on the screen around about now, dealt with the verbs that fall under the Gaeilge Réimniú, or the first conjugation. All verbs in Irish fall into either the first conjugation, the second conjugation, or the 11 irregular verbs. I would advise you to look at that video before listening to the rest of this one. Okay, so today's video is going to deal with on Dara Réimniú. So on Dara Réimniú, as I've said, is the second conjugation. The general rule is any verb that has more than one syllable in it falls into the Dara Réimniú, the second verb grouping. However, there are a handful that with 2 syllables that fall into the first grouping, and they were dealt with in the last video. Like verbs that fall into the Gaeilge Réimniú, we need to know if they're Lahan or if they're Quail. So to find out if they're Lahan, we look at the last vowel in the word, and if it is broad, it's Lahan, so it means we'll have a broad ending, or if it's Quail, it's slender, meaning we'll need a slender ending. The best way to begin is with an example. So let's start with the verb tusig, which means to start, quite appropriately. Okay, so the first thing we do is get rid of the a-i-g-h, because we don't need that. The next thing we do is check the last vowel and see if it's Lahan or Quail, broad or slender. We know that it is Lahan. So that means our endings are going to have to be Lahan. We'll begin with the person singular. So me, to, she and she, me, you, he and she. We keep the TOS, and for me you put a because it's Lahan la Lahan, I fodda m. Tussium, I start. So for the next one, you keep the TOS and put your standard ending, your standard broad ending, I fodda ONN, and then you have to put the person afterwards. You don't need to do that with me because it's incorporated into the ending. So Tussian to, you start. She, standard ending, Lahan la Lahan, and the person. Tussian, she, he starts. And then she is similar, Tussian, she. Brilliant, so that's the person singular. Now let's go on to the person plural. So that's shin, shiv, shiad, which is we, ye, or you plural, and shiad, they. And then we'll deal with the ser briher as well, which is when you don't know the person and you're saying one will go to the shop. So you don't know if it's a man, woman, or child that went to the shop, but you know that somebody went to the shop. That's when you use the ser bríothar. And it's used a lot in really nice Irish. The endings keep the TOS, and because we is incorporated into the ending, it's tus amid. Tus a I fada mid. For shiv and shiad, you keep the standard ending, the standard Latin ending, a I fada onn, shiv, and a o fada inn, shiad. So tusi and shiv, tusi and shiad. And then for the ser bríothar, tusitar. So TOS, a I fada te a or. Okay, so let's move on to the form ceistach and the form diúltach. For the form ceistach, you soften the first consonant. So ní thosaíonn, I didn't start. Hopefully that explains how to conjugate verbs that are broad or have a consonant Latin in them. We should move on to an example of how to do it with quail. So let's take the verb imig. First thing we do, get rid of the IGH. Next thing, we look at the final vowel and see if it's broad or slender. In this case, it's slender. So we know all our endings are going to be slender. Singular person again. May to, she. May turns into imíonn, I go. Imíonn tú, you go. Imíonn sé, he goes. Imíonn she, she goes. And you can see that the endings are the same, apart from instead of the a, we have an I. We just go straight to the I to make it quail le quail, slender with slender. Let's go on to the persons plural and the ser bríothar. The ending for we, it becomes part of the word. So imamid, I fada mid. And for shiv and sheed, go back to the standard ending, slender ending. I am, I fada onn, imíonn shiv, imíonn shiad. And then the ser bríothar, imítar, one goes. Let's move on to the form ceistach and form diúltach. So for the question, an on before it, and for the negative, you put ní before it in the present tense. Now, I can see that you're all wondering why there is no eclipse and there is no shevu. It is because imig starts with a vowel, and if it starts with a vowel, it doesn't get eclipsed and it doesn't get a shevu. So you just leave in the on and the ní. So on imíonn tú, do you go, and ní imíonn, I do not go. Good. That is it more or less wrapped up. There is one more rule you need to know to understand the Dara Réimniú in the Amsir Láithreach, but it's nice and simple. If you see a verb ending in IR, AIR, AIL, IS, or IL, before you follow all the steps of the way we did with the other verbs, but you need to get rid of the I and get rid of the AI. So I'll show you 3 examples and it should make it clearer. We're going to do immer, to play, cuddle, to sleep, and inish, to say. For immer, you simply get rid of the last I and you put in the standard slender ending. So I fada onn, two. Imrian, two. For cuddle, you get rid of the ai, so you'll end up with codl, and then the standard broad ending, because o is broad, I fada onn. Cuddlian, she slept. And then for inish, get rid of the last I, so it turns into ins, and the standard slender ending, because I is quail, inshian, shiad. They said. Okay, so I hope that that helps with your study of Irish. There will be a third video explaining what happens to the irregular verbs in the Amsir Láithreach. So watch this space. Oh, and if you have any worries or need to check something, 3 dictionaries, official dictionaries by the state publisher, are those lovely books there, but they're quite expensive. But they do have a free website called changalan.ie. It is an amazing website. They even have sound bites where you can hear how to pronounce words and how to conjugate them. It's a really good free resource, and I recommend it to absolutely everyone. At least log on and have a look. Okay, guys, I hope that was beneficial. Slán agus beannacht.